mighty and cunning, Hygelac's kinsman was keenly watching for the first move the monster would make. Nor did the creature keep him waiting, but struck suddenly and started in. He grabbed and mauled the man on his bench, bit into his bone lappings, bolted down his blood, and gorged on him in lumps, leaving the body utterly lifeless, eaten up hand and foot. Venturing closer, his talon was raised to attack Beowulf where he lay on the bed. He was bearing in with open claw when the alert hero's comeback and armlock forestalled him utterly. The captain of evil discovered himself in a hand grip harder than anything he had ever encountered in any man on the face of the earth. Every bone in his body quailed and recoiled, but he could not escape. He was desperate to flee to his den and hide with the devil's litter, for in all his days he had never been clamped or cornered like this. Then Hygelac's trusty retainer recalled his bedtime speech, sprang to his feet and got a firm hold. Fingers were bursting, the monster backtracking, the man overpowering. The dread of the land was desperate to escape, to take a roundabout road and flee to his lair in the fence. The latching power in his fingers weakened. It was the worst trip the terrormonger had taken to hear it. And now the timbers trembled and sang, a whole session that harrowed every day inside the stockade. Stumbling in fury, the two contenders crushed through the building. The whole clattered and hammered, but somehow survived the onslaught and kept standing. It was handsomely structured, a sturdy frame, braced with the best of blacksmith's work, inside and out. The story goes that as the pair struggled, meat benches were smashed and sprang off the floor, gold fittings and all. Before then, no shielding elder would believe there was any power or person upon earth capable of wrecking their horn-rigged hull, unless the burning embrace of a fire would engulf it in flame. Then an extraordinary wail arose, and bewildering fear came over the Danes. Everyone felt it who heard that cry as it echoed off the wall, a god-cursed scream and strain of catastrophe, the howl of the loser, the lament of the hell-serf keening his wound. He was overwhelmed, manacled, tied by the man who of all men was foremost and strongest in the days of this life.
What on earth deserves our trust? Youth and beauty both are dust. Long we gathering are with pain, what one moment calls again. 7 years childless marriage past, a son at last, so exactly limbed and fair, full of good spirits, mane and air, as a long life promised. And yet, in less than 6 weeks dead. Too promising, too great a mind, in so small room to be confined. Therefore, as if fit in heaven to dwell, he quickly broke the prison shell. So subtle the alchemist, can't with Herm's seal resist the powerful spirit's subtler flight, but 'twill bid him long good night. And so the sun, if it arise, half as glorious as his eyes, like this infant takes a shroud, buried in the morning cloud.
The boy stood on the burning deck, whence all that he had fled. The flames that lit the battle's wreck shone round him o'er the dead. Yet beautiful and bright he stood, as born to rule the storm, a creature of heroic blood, a proud, tough childlike form. The flames rolled on, he would not go without his father's word, that father faint in death below, his voice no longer heard. He called aloud, "Say, father, say, if yet my task is done." He knew not that his chieftain lay, unconscious of his son. "Speak, father," once again he cried, "if I may yet be gone." And but the booming shots replied, and fast the flames rolled on. Upon his brow he felt their breath, and in his waving hair, and locked from that long past death, in still yet brave despair. He shouted but once more aloud, "My father, must I stay?" While o'er him fast, through sail and shroud, the wrecking fires made way. They wrapped the ship in splendor wild, they caught the flag on high, and streamed above the gallant child, like banners in the sky. There came a burst of thunder sound. The boy, oh where was he? Ask of the winds that far around, with fragments through the sea. Mast and helm, and pennon fair, that well had borne their part. The noblest thing that perished there was that young, faithful heart.
He was the first, always. Fortune shone bright in his face. I fought for years with no effort, he conquered the place. We ran, my feet were all bleeding, but he won the race. Spite of his many successes, men loved him the same. My one pale ray of good fortune met scoffing and blame. When we erred, they gave him pity, but me, only shame. My home was still in the shadow, his lay in the sun. I longed in vain. What he asked for, it straightway was done. Once I staked all my heart's treasure. We played, and he won. Yes, and just now I have seen him cold, smiling and blessed, laid in his coffin. God help me. While he is at rest, I'm cursed still to live. Even death loved him the best.
To Althea from Prison by Richard Lovelace. When love, with unconfined wings, hovers within my gates, and my divine Althea brings to whisper at the grates, when I lie tangled in her hair and fettered to her eye, the gods that wanton in the air know no such liberty. When flowing cups run swiftly round, with no allaying tend, our careless heads with roses bound, our hearts with loyal flames. When thirsty grief in wine we steep, when healths and draughts go free, fishes that tipple in the deep know no such liberty. When, like committed linnets, I with shriller throat shall sing the sweetness, mercy, majesty, and glories of my King, when I shall voice aloud how good he is, how great should be, in large winds that call the flood, know no such liberty. Stone walls do not a prison make, nor iron bars a cage. Mine's innocent and quiet take, that for an hermitage. If I have freedom in my love, and in my soul am free, angels alone that soar above enjoy such liberty.
A blockade by Amy Lavelle. Before me lies a mass of shapeless days. That's not again. That's not again. A blockade by Amy Lavelle. Before me lies a mass of shapeless days.
Unseparated atoms, I must sort them apart and lift them. Sifted dust covers the formless heap.
Reprieves.
What?
Reprieves.
Oh, reprieves, delays. I must. Wait, reprieves, delays. Actually, got another poem. A blockhead by Amy Film. Before me lies the mash of shapeless days, unseparated atoms, and I must sort them apart and lift them. Sifted dust covers the formless heap. Reprieves, delays, they're none ever. As the monk who prays, the side who beats asunder. So I thrust each tasteless particle aside, and just begin the task which never stays. I've known a glory of great suns, when the days flash by, passing with joy and fire, drunk bubbled wine in goblets of desire, and I felt the whipped blood laughing as it runs. Spilt is that liquor, my too hasty hand, threw down the cup and did not understand.
Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the centre cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosened everywhere. The ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming? Hardly are those words out, when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight somewhere in sands of desert. A shape with lion body and the head of a man. A gaze as blank and pitiless as the sun is moving its slow thighs, while all about it, real shadows of the indignant desert birds, and the darkness drops again. But now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born.
I met a traveller from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passion bred which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, a hand that mocked and a heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear: my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of the colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away.
I'll be reciting Geoffrey Chaucer's work, Bath Prologue. A good wife was there, be seated Bathy, but she was some deal deaf, and that was scathy. Of cloth my king she had a switching height, she passed him of Ypres, and of Gaunt. In all of the parish Wifner was there none that to the offerings before her should gone. And if they did certain, so wroth was she, as she was out of all the charity. Her covered she's full fiend wearing of grind. I do swearing they weighed in 10 pound. That on a Sunday wearing upon her head, her hosen wearing a fine scarlet red. Full stripey tied, his shoes full moist and new. Bold was her face, and fair and red of hue. She was a worthy woman all her life. Husbands at church door she had faith, without an other companier in youth. But there needeth not to speak as now. And thrice had she been at Jerusalem, She'd passed many a strange stream. At Rome she had been, and at Bologna, in Galice at St. Jam, and at Cologne. She could much her wanderers be the way. Gat tooth was she, soothly for to say. Upon an ampler easily she sat, a wimple well upon her head and hat, as broad as is a buckler or a targe. A footmantle about her hip as large, and on her feet a pair of spores sharpe. In fellowship well could she laugh and carpe, of remedies of love she knew perchance, for she could have that art, the old dance.
Envy by Adelaide and Proctor. He was the first always. Fortune shone bright in his face. I fought for years. With no effort, he conquered the place. We ran. My feet were all bleeding, but he won the race. Spite of his many successes, men loved him the same. My one pale ray of good fortune met scoffing and blame. When we erred, they gave him pity, but me, only shame. My home was still in the shadows. His lay in the sun. I longed in vain. What he asked for straightway was done. Once I staked all my heart's treasures, we played and he won. Yes, and just now I have seen him, cold, smiling, and blessed, laid in his coffin. God help me, while he is at rest, I am cursed still to live, and even death loved him the best.
The Things That Matter by E. Nesbit. Now that I've nearly done my days, and grown too stiff to sweep or sew, I sit and think till I'm amazed about what lots of things I know. Things as I found out one by one, and when I'm fast down in the clay, my knowing things and how they're done will all be lost and thrown away. There's things I know as won't be lost, things as folks write and talk about. The way to keep your roots from frost and how to get your ink spots out. What medicine's good for sores and sprains, what way to salt your butter down. What charms will cure your different pains and what will bright your faded gown. But more important things than these, they can't be written in a book. How fast to boil your greens and peas and how good bacon ought to look. The feel of real good wearing stuff, the kind of apples will keep. The look of bread that's rose enough and how to get a child asleep. Young wives come in. Whether the jam is fit to pot, whether the milk is going to turn, whether a hen will lay or not, is things as some folks never learn. I know the weather by the sky, I know what herbs grow in what lanes, and if sick men are going to die or if they'll get about again. Young wives come in a-smiling, brave, with secrets that they itch to tell. I know what sort of times they'll have, and if they'll have a boy or girl. And if a lad is ill to bind or some young maid is hard to lead, I know when you should speak 'em kind and when it's scolding as they need. I used to know where birds had set and likely spots for trout or hare, and gods may want me to forget the way to set a line or snare, but not the way to truss a chick to fry a fish or baste a roast, nor how to tell when folks are sick what kind of herbs will ease them most. Forgetting seems such silly waste. I know so many little things, and now the angels will make haste to dust it all away with wings. Oh God, you made me like to know. You kept the thing straight in my head. Please, God, if you can make it so, let me know something when I'm dead.
The poem I'm reciting is on being cautioned against walking on a headland by Charlotte Smith. Is there a solitary wretch that hies to the tall cliff with starting pace or slow, and, measuring views with wild and hollow eyes, the distance from the waves that chide below, who, as the sea-born gale with frequent sighs, chills his cold bed upon the mountain turf, with hoarse, half-uttered lamentation lies, murmuring responses to the dashing surf? In moody sadness, on the giddy brink, I see him more with envy than with fear. He has no nice felicities that shrink from giant horrors. Wildly wandering here, he seems, unaccursed with reason, not to know the depth or the duration of his woe.
Porphyria's Lover by Robert Browning. The rain set early in tonight. The sullen wind was soon awake. It tore the elm tops down in spite, and did its worst to vex the lake. I listened with heart fit to break. When glided in Porphyria, straight she shut out the cold and the storm, and kneeled and made the cheerless grave blaze up, and all the cottage warm. Which done, she rose, and from her form withdrew the dripping cloak and shawl, and laid the soiled gloves by, untied her hat, and let the damp hair fall. And last, she sat down by my side and called me. When no voice replied, she put my arm about her waist and made her smooth white shoulder bare, and all her yellow hair displaced, and stooping, made my cheek lie there, and spread all o'er her yellow hair, murmuring how she loved me. She, too weak for all her heart's endeavours, to set its struggling passion free from pride, from vainer ties dissever, and give herself to me forever. But sometimes passion would prevail, nor could tonight's gay feast restrain a sudden thought of one so pale, for love of her, and all in vain. So she was come through wind and rain, be sure I looked up at her eyes, happy and proud at last I knew, Porphyria worshipped me. Surprise made my heart swell, and still it grew while I debated what to do. That moment, she was mine fair, perfectly pure and good. I found a thing to do, and with her hair in one long yellow string, I wound 3 times her little throat around and strangled her. No pain felt she. I am quite sure she felt no pain. As a shut bud that holds the bee, I warily opened her lids. Still laughed the blue eyes without a stain, and I entightened the next tress about her neck. Her cheek once more blushed bright beneath my burning kiss. I propped her head up as before, only this time it was my shoulder that bore her head, which droops upon it still. Smiling little rosy head, so glad it has its utmost will, that all its scorn that once is fled, and I its love am gained instead. Porphyria's love, she guessed not how her darling one wish would be heard. And thus we sit together now, and all night long we have not stirred, and yet God has not said a word.
Snake by Emily Dickinson. A narrow fellow in the grass occasionally rides. You may have met him, did you not? His notice sudden is. The grass divides as with a comb a spotted shaft is seen. Then it closes at your feet and opens further on. He likes a boggy acre, a floor too cool for corn. Yet when a child and barefoot, I more than once at noon have passed I thought a whiplash unbraiding in the sun. But when stooping to secure it, it wrinkled and was gone. Several of nature's people I know and they know me. I feed them for a transpost of cordiality, but never met this fellow, attended or alone, without a tighter breathing, and 0 at the bone.
I just want to say about this competition, it's the bravest thing ever to come up here and speak somebody else's words. It's absolutely the bravest thing that you could do, and I think everyone should. It's like all competitions, at the end your hands are just burning like but okay, so I've done a lot of work for Poetry by Heart, you know, going around telling everyone how much a great time I've had, and you guys are experiencing like the first stages that I experienced, and I hope you realise, you know, obviously one person will go on to whatever and blah blah blah, but that you have 3 poems or 3 poems, you know, in your memory. That's more than most people have, and you know, you won't. They will kind of haunt you a little bit sometimes. You'll walk around at Tesco and you're going to be like, poem, 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 poem. And I'm sure it was the most bonkers thing ever to have to talk to yourself, to remember them a lot. Everyone thought I was going mad. I didn't tell my mum until like a week or so before I went into my school competition that I was learning a poem. I think she and like her prayer group were praying for me because she thought I was going bonkers, just going all the time. But anyway, this poem is by Bob Hickok or Hickok. And I was inspired by my gap year work, which is doing administration, and I have a funny boss who likes to tell me to do useless things and find out all sorts of research, and then it's kind of pointless. So this inspired me to read After Working 60 Hours Again for What Reason by Bob Hickok. The best job I had was moving a stone from one side of the road to the other. This required a permit, which required a bribe. The bribe took all my salary. Yet, because I hadn't finished the job, I had no salary. And to pay the bribe, I took a job moving the stone the other way. Because the official wanted the bribe, he gave me a permit for the second job. When I pointed out that the work would be best completed if I did nothing, he complimented my brain and wrote a letter to my employer suggesting promotion on stationery bearing the wings of a raptor spread in flight over a mountain smaller than the bird. My boss, fearing my intelligence, paid me to sleep on the sofa and take lunch with the official who required a bribe to keep anything from being done. When I told my parents, they wrote my brother to come home from university to be slapped on the back of the head. Dutifully, he arrived and bowed to receive his instruction, at which point sense entered his body, and he asked what I do by way of a job. I pointed out that there were stones everywhere trying not to move. All it took was a little gumption to be the man who didn't move them. It was harder to explain the intricacies of not obtaining a permit to not do this. Just yesterday, he got up at dawn and shaved, as if the lack of hair on his face has anything to do with the appearance of food on an empty table.
All right, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll start off as a piece of poetry, and then we might see if we go into song, just to embarrass everybody, okay? It's called The Owl and the Pussycat by Edward Lear. The owl and the pussycat went to sea in a beautiful pea-green boat. They took some honey and plenty of money wrapped up in a 5-pound note. The owl looked up to the stars above and sang to a small guitar. Oh, lovely pussy, oh pussy, my love, what a beautiful pussy you are, you are, you are. What a beautiful pussy you are. Said pussy to owl, you elegant fowl, how charmingly sweet you sing. Oh, let us be married, too long we have tarried, but what shall we do for a ring? They sailed away for a year and a day to the land where the palm trees grow. And there in a wood, a piggy-wig stood with a ring at the end of his nose. His nose, with a ring at the end of his nose. Dear pig, are you willing to sell for 1 shilling your ring? Said the piggy, I will. So they took it away and were married next day to the turkey that lived on the hill. They dined on mince and pieces of quince, which they ate with a runcible spoon. And hand in hand on the edge of the sand, they danced by the light of the moon. the moon, the moon. And they danced by the light of the moon.
Sea Rose by Hilda Doolittle. Rose, harsh rose, marred and with stint of petals, meagre flower, thin, sparse of leaf, more precious than a wet rose single on a stem. You are caught in the drift, stunted with small leaf. You are flung on the sand. You are lifted in the crisp sand that drives in the wind. Can the spiced rose drip such acrid fragrance hardened in a leaf?